Well, after the full report was broadcast, we were contacted by Reynolds, the head teacher of the short-stay school for Norfolk. It takes all excluded pupils in the county and is one of the largest schools of its kind in the country. Late this afternoon, he came into the studio and told me how it works.
By creating this short-stay school about 3 years ago, what Norfolk did was to create a consistent model of provision. So if a young person from Wells or Great Yarmouth or King's Lynn are permanently excluded, they have access to the same level of provision and the same model of provision wherever they happen to live.
It does seem extraordinary that in other counties there are places that aren't registered or aren't inspected. I mean, from your point of view, isn't this a danger to the protection of both staff and children?
Well, I think young people with vulnerable and challenging behaviours exhibit things that can be a challenge to manage. So it's very important within our institution we have a very clear structure to manage those behaviours and to ensure that staff are well trained and are qualified to deal with the challenges that young people bring. I think that's really important for any institution that's going to work with young people with those sorts of needs.
In our report that we ran earlier this week, we saw a young man who was clearly agitated. Are those the kind of instances that your staff will have to deal with on a regular basis?
Well, young people who exhibit those sorts of behaviours are attempting to communicate in their own way. They often don't have necessarily access to the same levels of communication skills or cognitive function that perhaps we would normally express. So what he's trying to do is to show his frustration. He's trying to communicate with those around him. And yes, sometimes the young people in my school will communicate in those ways, but by and large, if you're able to support them in being successful, then actually what you'll do is remove the need for them to communicate in that way.
And how do you measure the success of what you're doing?
Well, first and foremost, we're a school, so we measure the success of our young people in how much they are learning. 75% of the young people in the short-stay school gain the same level of progress academically as they would if they'd stayed in a mainstream school, which, when you consider the challenges that they've gone through and sometimes the life stories that they have, that's actually a fantastic result. But also it's important to acknowledge that some of those softer skills, we spend a lot of time working with young people around being able to eat together politely at a breakfast table, for example, or those social skills about actually how do you communicate, how do you play well together, how do you cooperate, how do you mediate, how do you deal with conflict. Learning to lose, for example, is a very important skill for a young person.
Reynolds, thank you very much.